Watch me.
Just watch me now. Just watch me now. I got something for you, a little more for you. You won't believe your eyes. Just watch me now. I got something for you, a little more for you. You won't believe your eyes. Just watch me now. Just watch me now.
Hey Ryan, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Very good. I see you're back in your home office.
I am, and you're not in yours. This is some turnabout here.
I know I'm in our Fargo campus here at Microsoft. So we had a great kind of pre-Giving Hearts Day event. Got to hear some neat organizations locally, their stories, how they're impacting the community. So doing the stream from the office here today.
Nice. Well, it's a very fancy wall behind you.
Indeed. Well, let's just quick, anybody that's joining new that hasn't, been on the show here before, who hasn't watched, intros quick. So I'm Grant Melstead. I'm a security specialist at Microsoft, and really security as in Microsoft 365 security. So most folks are familiar with Office 365, our productivity and collaboration suite. But of course, M365 is Microsoft's holistic platform solution for businesses to help with productivity, security, collaboration, communication, really, you name it. So that's me. Ryan, you want to quick say hi?
Yeah. So I'm a customer success account manager. So what I do is I talk to I help with customers who have unified contracts. So support, proactive services, finding engagements, and just trying to make sure that they're getting the most use they can out of their Microsoft investment. So that's I am the post-sales help when it comes to this.
And you and I get to work a lot together. We support state and local government customers here in the U.S. So, anyways, the format of our discussions, right, are hey, let's talk about recent things that Microsoft has going on, new news, products, developments, things like that. So I know I've got a couple things specifically to talk about, but did you have any burning topics you wanted to bring up right away?
Yeah. Burning is a very appropriate phrase for what I'm about to talk about here. We talked about this last week a little bit, which is we have officially expanded hot patching for Windows Server to all server OSs in Azure. So it used to just be for core, sort of server core, which is the command line only version of server. Now it's available for server with the desktop experience. That was big news. I was pretty excited about that. And then a week after we talked last time, Microsoft officially announced Server 2025, which is thrilling. I'm really excited to see what all that's going to come with. One of the big announcements right away was it will include hot patching for on-prem builds of Windows. So for those of you who don't know what the hot patching is, burning topic, of course, hot patching lets you essentially install security updates without needing to restart the OS. So the update is factored in a way that it will restart services as required without interrupting any running software on the server. So you can now essentially keep your servers up to date without restarting, which means you don't have to worry about trying to schedule stuff out weeks or months in advance. Updates will hit, you'll be updated for security, and you can handle quality of life updates that come out as you need to. Microsoft has a really good guide that shows a timeline you could use to essentially restart your servers once a quarter rather than once a month for updates. And you could push that longer if you need to. But the big thing there is the server OS itself will remain secure without you having to do anything, right? You just enable hot patching and let it run. So that's a pretty exciting update to have available now.
Indeed. So I'm assuming that's Azure. Of course, you can do that. Did you say you can also do that on premise?
with Server 2025 is now available for on-prem servers as well. So you can do it right now in Azure for Server Core and Server 2022. But starting here later this year when Server 2025 is officially GA and is available for you to download and install, get going, right?
Yeah.
Start updating your environment and let's get secure.
Yeah. No, indeed. I mean, I would imagine from your previous life and you know what you were doing before this has got to be a game changer, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, the time and effort we spent every month trying to make sure our servers were secure and patched, right? Because most of them don't need the quality of life updates. They're like, no, this is changed. We're tweaking this a little bit. I don't care. I just need it to run because this critical service is running on it.
Sure.
Well, now no. If you have servers that are clustered, and you're trying to restart parts of a cluster to keep the cluster up, don't restart it. Just let it run updates. So,
yeah,
we're getting there.
Cool. Oh, great bit there. Well, I'll go next.
Yeah.
So yesterday there was a big announcement that Azure OpenAI services are now in the Azure Government Cloud. So I know this one hits home specifically for you and I with working with public sector organizations. Really maybe just to help folks understand a little bit. So usually like Microsoft has our M365 licensing and we have enterprise offerings like E3, E5. And then for our government customers, we have a GCC line or government community cloud line of the SKUs. So we have M365 G3, M365 G5. And some interesting kind of parts about that is they're still leveraging some of the kind of commercial core Azure infrastructure for things like Entra ID and things of that nature. But, you know, they have their dedicated, kind of government specific area, right, for where their data lives. But on the Azure side, a lot of what we saw folks doing was, at least in the PubSec space, was they were still using Azure Commercial for a lot of their workloads. So they were able to use some of those new AI services. They just had to be mindful, of course, like we don't want to put, really any highly sensitive data in here. We still have to, stay, of course, within the boundaries of like what types of compliance regulations we have. But now with having true, Azure OpenAI services in our Azure Gov, so azure.gov instead of azure.us, right, for actually the instance specifically, this is huge, right? Where now you're going to start to see, I think, more organizations leveraging and at least even trying, exploring, like what are the capabilities, what are the possibilities. In the specific blog post that I was reading and that I had shared on LinkedIn, was talking about helping with like creating the RFP process. Like, hey, that is a big time consuming activity for members of our, public sector organizations. And man, all of a sudden, if we can point an AI service at it to help you look historically, like kind of what we've done in the past, what we'd like to replicate, and then give us a first draft at an RFP for a new project was super neat. And that was just one of the examples. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of them in the doc that, again, I had shared on LinkedIn. So I thought that was pretty neat. And it was a pretty quick, like, hey, that was already at least Azure Gov approved. Now I know like there's Azure Gov, I think for the, the DoD space and like some of the even higher clearances that are now going through the audit process. But it was neat to see that at least we had kind of that first sample of approval for the services.
I feel like we've talked about this before, and I know when I talk to my government customers, people I used to work with in local government, right? Everyone wants to know when is Copilot coming, and then the answer is always like, well, we think summer 2024 is kind of what has been publicly announced. But personally, I find myself kind of going, we'll see. Like, I'm not going to plan on that until it actually happens. I spent way too long in the GCC environment watching features show up for commercial, getting excited, and having to wait months or years sometimes for like something to show up. I think the benefit here is there's so much interest around Copilot and what it can do. I think Microsoft is probably, Planner took 3 years to make it to GCC. No one was really clamoring for Planner. Like, I wanted it, didn't matter. Copilot, very different story, right? So I think at this point we're seeing, and the fact that it's already available, OpenAI is available in government, is a massive jump. And I think that's sort of where we're going to start to see a lot of this stuff coming down pretty quickly. And we've said before that government is not the big revenue driver. So normally stuff is kind of slow, but I think Microsoft has realized that this is a powerful enough tool that making it available for people is just going to make it better for everyone, right? And not that it's learning from, like, if you get it for your organization, the models and learning that happen in your organization stay in your organization. Those aren't going to be spread to the rest of the rest of the world. But the more people that use it, the more use cases you generate. The more you find someone who did something novel and interesting with Copilot that no one else even thought to do, right? And so you kind of like, we just need more. Basically, we're learning how to write again as a species, and this is going to be, who's writing the next great novel? It's going to be some random person who has a cool idea and figure out how Copilot can make it work.
Yeah. No, indeed. It's exciting times to be here for sure. So what else have you got?
So another little security thing. And again, this is, I come from the, boots on the ground technical side of this. So this I think is pretty exciting, which is Windows Lapse, which is the local admin password solution. Lapse has been around for a very long time. Windows Lapse is newer. For the first time ever, they're now allowing passphrase support for Lapse, which is great. So we talk a lot about, on the security side, we want people to eventually get passwordless, right? The goal is to get them away from passwords. Passwords are always going to be a weak point for security.
From an end user perspective, passwordless is pretty phenomenal. I mean, I know
it's easier for the end user.
Yeah.
Right. It's more secure because no one can fish for your password if there's no password. So that's convenient. But the Lapse component works for the local admin account on the device. So every organization has something on the device that they need. If they need access to it, they have a local admin account. The way it worked before is it generates just a really user-unfriendly string of characters. So at Boulder, ours was 20 characters long. Most organizations choose 20 characters for that. And it was, uppercase, lowercase, symbols, numbers. So if you called in and said, "What's my password?" I have to pull up and be like, "Boy, here we go." Well, now we've added passphrase support. So you can choose to have a certain number of words at a certain maximum length for words. It will just fill up enough words to meet your minimum length requirement. So as organizations start to look at how do they manage their devices, right? Especially if they're starting to look at anything to do with Intune, Azure AD joining, how you're going to manage your devices in the cloud to stop being so reliant on having to talk back to an on-prem domain controller. This is huge. This is going to be incredibly helpful for organizations, for management, for security. And it's just one of these things that it's built into Windows, right? I feel like so often we talk about these big features, right? Like Copilot. Go spend some money, you can use Copilot. But there also are things that are free, right? We're still focusing on existing technology and processes that are going to help secure your environment, right? So you can we're giving you the option to do both things, right? Keep up to date on the free things that are already built in and sort of build that security, just that environment, that culture of security, and then extend that into the Microsoft 365 space, right? Once, these are both tools available to you.
Yeah.
So
I think as you're talking there about this specifically, some of it's a little over my head, but I can see the value for sure. But it makes me think as we talk with customers, very often one of the most challenging aspects of tech is trying to keep up with it. And when
Mhm.
you're, working with a vendor like Microsoft, it's like Microsoft is Fortune 1 company, right? I mean, the breadth of what we cover and what we have available is enormous. And I think that's where we wanted to create this platform to at least give some high level, like, hey, here's some really interesting things. Here's some new things. I know you have a newsletter, Ryan, that you send out to folks with, weekly updates of new news, articles, things like that. But even just in your past experience, like how do you stay up to date with a lot of this stuff? Because that's
Do
just
you
like
read?
a common issue I think that folks
Yeah.
face is like, Grant, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know we could do that. Like, oh man, that's valuable. Yeah, we want to do it now that we know.
Yeah, I
What do
mean,
you
it's the Microsoft breadth, I think, is what makes it so difficult, right? If we were focused on a product, right? And I feel like this is going to be a really negative sounding analogy. I feel like we're like the Cheesecake Factory of tech companies, that our menu is like a million pages long, right? And so if we were, you know, a really good taco truck and we made phenomenal tacos, that's all we did,
Mhm.
we could keep up to date on taco technology, right? But instead, we're like, oh, you didn't read menu page 87 and learn that this came out. Oh, you got to keep up to date on that, right? And so it really is just this constant. I mean, I'm always so every week I send out normally 100 to 120 news articles, and that's pared down from probably 200 that I go throughout the course of the week. And it covers everything, but only because it has to, right? I mean, and I talk to my customers so often, and what are you working on? What's going on in your environment? And they'll say something, I go, I don't even know what that is, right?
Mhm.
Like Azure landing zones are a new thing that I'm starting to have to like figure out what's going on. And I've got people who are like, oh, those are really great. I don't even know what they are. Well, apparently I should learn about them now, right? Like, oh, you want to, make a place that someone could drop a VM and it just configures it following your best practices. Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's learn more about that. So yeah, it's been really interesting going through some of this stuff, because you're right. A lot of it it's hard to keep up, but I also have people that I know I can go to learn what they're learning.
Right.
Then I take what's interesting to me or my customers and then pass it on to them.
Mhm.
So it's sort of like, in the chain of knowledge, right? You kind of just have to figure out where you go for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
it's knowing, yeah, where to look, who to leverage. Like you said, you don't have to be the master of everything, of course, and that's not
yeah,
even possible.
but even then, I
Um,
mean, how often do we come to each other with questions that pop up, right? And I go, I know you have resources I don't have. So
right.
something comes up and I go, I have no idea, but maybe Grant knows someone who knows the answer, right? And that's I think how we get to do here, right? Is we get to have that same conversation, and
Hmm.
maybe someone asks us a question and we go, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I know someone who might know, and you just
Two thoughts from that. Yeah. I mean, if there's ever folks that have questions, we're happy to bounce ideas. Um, whether you contact us through LinkedIn or however, we're happy to always help out and at least give some ideas of where to start. But I think that segues a little nicely even into a special event we're going to be hosting on February 22nd. This is something that we did last year. It was in January of 23. And I know I think we had over 200 people on LinkedIn that had signed up. And I forget the analytics now of really the reach of what that video got, but it was all about M365 licensing.
mhm.
Now that's something I talk about every day. And we make things interesting at Microsoft where we like to change names every couple of years. So Entra ID is still we're getting there. It's taken me even some time to try to forget Azure Active Directory. It's Entra ID now. But anybody who wants to obviously listen to our conversation about M365 licensing, what you get, what's available, where's the value add. We'll probably talk a little bit about, Copilot in that session, but we'll be having that on February 22nd. So make sure you hit the attend button and share out to your network. I mean, we'd love to have even greater reach and impact than we did a year ago on the topic. So
it is one of those conversations that I think people come into it expecting it to be difficult because it's Microsoft, right? Microsoft licensing is sort of, as a meme now, confusing and difficult. And so once you try to get past like, all right, I'm just going to assume it's difficult, or I'll see how I feel about it, and you jump into it, there's stuff that, once you have to break it down, it seems more simple. But then once you add in like GCC, like we have to for our customers, it gets way more confusing again. But it's just something that, I think both of us have dealt with, me on the customer side, you on the Microsoft side, for so long, that we've been able to really answer a lot of questions for people. And something that I said we continue to do on a regular basis. I mean, I am not in sales. And the number of calls I have with people who aren't my customers who just want to talk about licensing is wild to me. Right? They just have a question, or they need a little bit of help with something. And there's tons of documentation, but it's hard to figure out what's the right documentation and what actually applies. And right, sometimes
this document contradicts this document. Exactly. So how do you know which one to believe?
Yeah. And so it's really difficult to not without, who do you go talk to about that, right? Who's the person? And so this is something we can do at scale, is talk about this. And then if we, some people have questions, I mean, I answered a ton of questions after the last one, people messaging me about weird edge cases, or, hey, we're government, we're trying to do this. What does this cover? Right. And it's just, let's chat about it.
Exactly.
So we'll be doing that here in a couple of weeks. I'm pretty excited about, because it's always fun.
Oh, indeed. And one last plug, I want to give you obviously an opportunity to bring up more topics. One last plug I'll have is my team specifically has been having a lot of webinars, multi-customer briefing type of sessions that we've been hosting. A lot of them, of course, have been Copilot readiness. Purview has been a big one. The compliance side of, okay, if we unleash AI in our environment, let's make sure that we have the foundation built. So feel free to attend any of these events that you see myself, the Microsoft team sharing. It's free, available. So jump on in, for any of those sessions that we have. So that was my last little plug for all the webinars and the content that our teams are putting out here.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting about those is that even if you've been to one before, a lot of times I feel like the questions and the comments that come up during those are sometimes as useful as the actual content of the webinar, right? Because I think we said this last time we talked, that Copilot is such a weird tool that, like, how do you, if we try to describe what you can do with Copilot, we're going to fail, because it's just, there's so many uses. There's such a broad, Wild West sort of tool available now. And so I feel like what makes it fun is to, you talk about it and someone will ask a question, and you go, I would not have thought to ask that, or even my mind would not have gone to that place to think about using it that way. But now that it's there, this is super cool. Let's talk about it.
Right.
And so I think that's part of the benefit as well, right? It's these webinars, you're going to learn from us, but then also you're probably going to learn a lot from everyone else who's there. And it's just kind of an interesting collaborative experience that when we talk about licenses are, as complex as they are, they're very cut and dry, right? This gets you this feature. Done. Whereas Copilot just sort of says, here's a genie in a bottle, go wish for something cool, right? And I wouldn't have thought to ask for that wish, but that's a really neat wish. Let me follow up with someone. So
indeed.
Yeah, that's a great thing to have people go to. I will talk about one thing real quick here, one last thing. And this is something I think we're going to start seeing a lot of, and it ties into AI vaguely, which is, so VMware got bought recently, well, a while ago, And Broadcom, the company that bought them, is starting to essentially downgrade support for some products. They're starting to just sort of get rid of some things. They announced 56 products that they are going to be cutting support for, and then came back a week later and were like, oh, maybe not all of them, but some of them, and some of them are going to go just subscription, but maybe not. So there's a lot of like confusion and some concern around people right now about what they're going to do with that. Right. So VMware to manage all of your VMs. Maybe you're using them for remote desktop. Maybe you're using them for security or control over your devices. I think it's something that Microsoft is very sad to see happening, but we offer great products. If you want to come talk to us about anything that VMware does in your environment, and especially you start to look at what you're already investing money in with us, right? With Microsoft. And again, talking about the Copilot piece, there's so many pieces that what if you could switch over and start using Microsoft to manage your VMs? And hey, now you've got some Copilot functionality built into it that you didn't have before, right? What if you could just ask Copilot, how are my VMs doing? What do I need to do to tweak these and make them run better? And let it give you some results and examples. This is a couple of my calls recently with customers who are starting to really sort of be concerned about what the future holds for them.
Sure.
And I mean, VMware has been a staple. That's like almost everyone I know uses VMware to manage part of their environment. But that may be changing in a way that is impactful, especially to smaller customers, right? I think someone like Coca-Cola would still be okay, but a city government somewhere or a small company doesn't have more flexibility. So just throwing that out there. If you have questions or want to talk more about it, let us know, because we can certainly have those conversations or find someone who can talk to you about it, and we can talk about what it looks like in your environment. Or even better, come to our licensing discussion and learn about the kind of licenses you get access to with your Microsoft 365.
There you go.
The virtual desktop or Windows 365, great. You already have OS rights. We'll talk about that. So,
a perfect closing argument, closing statement.
I rest my case.
Well, hey, let's we'll wrap it up for today. We're getting close to our 30 minutes, so we'll give everybody a couple minutes back. But this is good. Be on the lookout for episode 4. We're going to keep rolling with this. So if you guys see value, of course, comment on the videos, like, share. Again, that's where however much reach and impact, we can get from this type of engagement is super powerful. Again, I always joke with people about I live in my basement office, and this is kind of my outlet to the world. So we hope you guys enjoyed today's content, and we look forward to seeing y'all soon.
Yep. See you in a couple weeks. Ryan.